Greetings, friends, family, and people who've clicked on the thumbnail because they thought it was cute. Uh, Welcome to my channel. I am Rob Meats, also known as Roscoe, and today I would like to talk about Zendikar Rising. I know I promised to do this over the weekend, but I just wasn't in the mood for it, so I'm doing it now. And so yeah, Zendikar Rising. Those of you who know me within the LGS and our meta know that I'm what's known as a Belcher player or a combo player. I like weird kind of like tier 2.5 decks that are, when they work they're spectacular, but when they fail it's just kind of meh. But that's the style of deck I like to play. They usually hit the opponent from out of left field. And one of my favorite archetypes of all time, or I shouldn't say archetypes, my favorite decks of this archetype of all time is Charbelcher, also known as just Belcher from this point on. So with Zendikar Rising, they printed spell lands or modal spells, depending on who talks about them. I refer them as modal spells myself, just because there's two different modes. There's the spell mode and then there's the land mode. And these things are absolutely phenomenal for well, I'd actually go as far as to say 3 different types of combo decks in Modern. I'm talking about Modern, if you didn't know. So Belcher. So now we're seeing a rise of no land Belcher lists, a bunch of them. Oops, all spells is another one that we've seen a massive resurgence of recently. And also the last one, which isn't as common, but it's still just as potent as the other two, is Underworld Breach. And so some people would argue with me saying that you don't want too many spell lands in Underworld Breach. I disagree. You don't need a whole lot of lands to run Underworld Breach, and really I think it's just wise to not run any at all, because there's a lot, like in those colors. Red and blue is the typical color combination for Underworld Breach decks. You've got cost reduction from things like Goblin Electromancer and Brawl. You can power those out as early as turn 1 with Simian Spirit Guides. So you don't really need a whole lot of lands, like 1, 2, maybe 3 at most. You have all the rituals, you have Metamorphose. Like, the deck just plays out very, very consistently. So that's why personally I like the spell lands in the Underworld Breach format. Not that I play it a whole lot, but so the other two is Oops, All Spells, and Belcher. Belcher being my favorite. Oops, All Spells is a close second. I haven't played it in a very long time though, so I'm going to be talking more about Belcher here. With Belcher, there's a lot of different ways you can go with this. Lots of people are running the all-in list, which is features Ironcrag Feet. So for 4, 3 red and 1 other, you produce 7 red mana, and you can only cast 1 more spell this turn, which happens to be Charbelcher. That's the amount of mana you need to cast and activate it. So, and in a true all-in list, you're only running 1 card in the deck that isn't red, so I call it mono red Belcher. And with the mono red Belcher, it's entirely possible to turn 1 kill with this list, but it's you're going to kill more reliably on turn 2 or turn 3. There are problems with consistency in the all-in list, because if you don't draw into a Belcher or an Iron Crag Fleet, you might as well just mulligan until you get them. And that's a big problem with the all-in list that I have. It's explosive, it's fun to play, but it's not very consistent. Moving on, there's a few other ways you can play Belcher. Well, really, there's a bunch of different ways, but I think there's maybe 2 or 3 other really viable ways to play it. So the other version of Belcher that I think is probably more consistent than the all-in list would be Jund Belcher. But with Jund Belcher, what we're doing is we're playing 2 different types of combos simultaneously in the same deck. And like, there's been debate on whether or not to side into the other plan or not. So what you're doing is you're combining Oops All Spells and Belcher into the same deck with Jund. And there's a few different ways to run it. You can run it with the Thassa's Oracle lines, or you can run it like a more traditional dredge package where you have Creeping Chills, Silver Smote Ghoul, Prized Amalgam, things like that. And hey, you know what? When it comes to these types of decks, it's a matter of preference. I haven't really played the like what I like to call the dredge package style of Oops All Spells yet, so I don't know which I prefer. I've only tested Thassa's Oracle lines, and it's solid enough. You know, it's good. It's a little fragile to Graveyard Hate, but hey, Oops All Spells is just fragile to Graveyard Hate anyways. It's one of the downfalls of the deck. So, Jund, Oops All Spells, there's argument for going Sultai, which is, you know, you get blue, so you have access to things like Pact of Negation, which makes it, the turns when you're going off, more reliable against control. If control's heavy in your meta, but if control isn't heavy in your meta, then I'd definitely recommend going Jund, because you get access to a myriad of discard spells, which will indicate whether the coast is clear to go for a Belcher kill or Oops All Spells lines. And also you have access to things like Lightning Bolt and so on and so forth, Bump in the Night. It's a good card to consider. Then there's also the Mardu list that's been running around recently. And if people want to see these lists in action, there's another YouTube channel out there. He goes by the name of Dylan MTG. He plays a lot of these lists. He has a Discord where we all kind of brainstorm and talk about Belcher, because we're all Belcher fans, or Oops All Spells, right? Those are the 2 things that he does. He likes his combos, like me. We're combo players. So yeah, the Mardu list becomes even more consistent because you're adding things like Pentad Prism, and there's the Soul Spike list, which, you know, removes dead cards if there's going to be dead cards in your hand, and, you know, keeps you alive longer against things like Izzet and Burn. And then I can't remember the name of the card, but it's a black card, flashback for red and white, smiting something or something smite. But yeah, it deals 3 damage to any target and you gain 3 life, which is also in the list. And, you know, that helps as well as being interaction against like Zoo or other decks that are trying to attack you to kill you. But it's sorcery speed, which is an issue. At least I think it is. I don't know. I can't remember the card all that well. I just saw it in a list. I haven't played with it yet. So there's the Mardu list as well, which, like I said, I think it's more consistent. And I think the idea of just adding Pinhead Prism to the Belcher slash Oops All Spells archetype is a good idea because it allows you to go off turn 2 fairly consistently. Yes, that's right. In Modern, we have turn 2 kills now. We had that also with Arclight Phoenix, and this might actually see the banning of Metamorphose if it becomes a serious problem. But the top decks right now have no issues fighting against janky little tier 2.5 deck like Belcher. I don't think it's really 2.5 anymore though, with the addition of the modal spells. So those are my thoughts on Belcher and Oops All Spells, Underworld Breach types of decks. In relation to the modal spells, there's other great cards in Zendikar Rising, but they're not very good in Modern. Some are great in Standard, even though I've never been much of a Standard player to begin with, and it's just not a format I enjoy because you have to spend gobs of money to have like the best deck, and you can't really just have, well, you can have fun with it, but you don't expect to do well, right? I've always preferred the internal formats, Commander, Modern, Legacy a little bit, but I'm a Reanimator guy when it comes to Legacy, and not traditional Reanimator. I like World Gorger combo. Yeah, it's an interesting one, but so that's that. Tell me what you think about modal lands and how they impact things like Belcher, Oops All Spells, and Breach combo. And, like, comment, subscribe, and hit that little bell somewhere down there. Yeah, have a great day, and I'll talk to y'all later.